Warm welcome to all the participants in today's webinar. This is our third webinar. The first was Rebooting Humanity, and the second was Crisis or Opportunity. This third program that we're going to do today is titled Get Real. So for those who are joining us for the first time, we just want you to know that Rtambhara is a wellness company that looks at wellness in a holistic way. Not just the body, but the mind as well, all through the practice of knowledge and wisdom that comes from our ancient Indian heritage. The topics that we will be taking on in our talks will delve into self-discovery, personal transformation, health, harmony and holistic well-being, and also we are going to be talking about the essence of India, which is a look into our arts, culture, and our traditions. So today we have for you Shri Krishnapani K.C. Raju, our program director, who will be talking on the subject, Get Real. You may have read the article earlier, but I'll just go through how we are going to conduct it today. There'll be 35 minutes of talk, and after that, Krishnapani ji will be happy to take questions, and you're free to ask him whatever questions you want. So for 20 minutes, we will do Q&A with Prem and Krishnapani ji. Krishnapani ji will actually host it, I think. There's some protocols we'd like you to, follow. You will all be muted through the talk, but you feel free to post your questions on a chat function. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you will see a chat function. If you click on that, you can type out your question and Krishnapani ji will go through them one by one. If you'd rather ask your question personally, then what we'd like you to do is to then go to the participants icon at the bottom of your screen again, and you will see something called raise hand. So if you click on the raise hand, like I'm doing now, you will see a blue hand that comes up against my face. And then Krishnapani ji will be able to follow those, and he'll ask you one by one to actually speak up, and Prem will actually unmute you at that time. There's another function, interestingly, which we just found out, which is there's something called reactions also at the bottom of your screen. If you go to reactions, you will see a thumbs up and you'll see a clapping of the hands. So if you appreciate anything, feel free to use that function as well. The other thing I wanted to tell you was that if we don't finish answering all your questions today, there's no problem. However, you've been contacted by us through WhatsApp or on email, please feel free to actually write in your questions, and Krishnapani ji will take them on. As soon as we get over with this, he'll take on all the questions that you have for him. So now, welcome to today's third webinar called Get Real. Krishnapani ji.
Thank you so much, Beena ji. A very good evening to all the participants. As you might have seen the small write-up, which we have given the title Get Real. Interestingly, we all seem to be having a lot of time on our hands now, and we are able to spend more time with ourselves. And this is really a good opportunity to understand life at a deeper level than what we have been doing earlier. So we are now, as I said, you have a lot of time, leisure to stare into the vacant skies or into the emptiness around you, and let your mind free, and sometimes not allow the mind to think much also, which is a very important aspect. Because too much of crowded thoughts can always hamper our understanding. Now, as I said, when you see a panorama, what it means is to have an unbroken view of the whole of your surroundings. Right from birth, we see that we have passed through several phases in our mind. Mentally we have passed, or psychologically we have passed through several stages. Initially, when we were born, it was all wonder. We might have been awestruck. We look at the whole surroundings, everything around us in a totally, in a sense of wonderment, and we don't really understand much about it. Then slowly that phase merges into the next phase of what we call it as inquisitiveness. It's a kind of curiosity where we are trying to make sense of things. We are trying to, probe into things, understand things, or we are very curious now. Then, whether you like it or not, or whether you call it fortunate or unfortunate, you are being now put onto a track by the elders into what they would call as a learning phase. A learning phase where you are made to learn several things. Learn in the sense you're picking up the threads now. You're trying to make more and more sense of life and things around you. Now in the learning phase, you're taught letters of the alphabet or the numbers, and we are all told about the countables and the not countables. We start going to the school. We start going to the school to learn several things. And in this phase, we normally find that we have got a lot of resistance, a rebellion. If you see in the pattern which our society has established, we see that we are not very keen to, children are not very keen to go to school because of the regimentation of the strict implementation of some kind of discipline or order to which the child is not used. But anyway, what happens is slowly that rebellion, gets into what we call as a kind of acceptance. Acceptance in the sense you now have a sense of not having the enough equipped. You are not equipped enough to counter the forces which have put you onto that track. So you are now slowly accepting things what they are, but still there is that mode of knowing new things, trying to look at the whole surroundings, whole world around you in a new way. You have a new dimension opening up for you, and that helps you in so many ways. Then slowly you are getting used to it. You get used to it. That means your focus has now shifted from a very broad outlook to a certain narrowing down of the outlook, where you are now in the mode of acquiring more and more, learning more and more, accumulating more and more of the knowledge and inputs that are coming through various sources. Now, once you are there, then the next phase is what you get into is you get used to it. You get used to it in the sense your focus is further narrowed down. You narrow down to a further focus where the background it doesn't matter much to you. The background, you take it as though that it is there, and then you don't focus much attention on the background that is there. So you take things for granted. Then as you grow up, you will learn some other skills which are in a way negative in the sense, now you are able to manipulate, you are able to exploit, you are able to make as much as possible out of the situation. That's what I have called it as misuse and abuse of things. So you are now in that mode of acquisition, acquiring things, whether physically or psychologically, that's both mentally and emotionally. In the sense you now get into relationships, you get into very serious relationships, you're married, and then you have children, and then so you are now fully involved in the whole process. And this process is actually a way of not living in accordance with nature, but you are living in a situation where your whole focus is on acquisition and exploitation. Then suddenly you come into the last phase, where you are now against, there's a lot of bewilderment. You start wondering, what the hell did I do about my whole life? My 50 years or 60 years or 70 years or whatever it is. What is it that I have really done throughout this whole thing? It appears as though you have completed one cycle and then come back to the same position, but in a different framework, mental framework. Earlier, it was the sense of wonderment was very receptive from your surroundings, but now that receptivity has converted itself into a kind of bewilderment. You don't seem to really understand the purpose of life, what has happened, and then that's the phase which makes a lot of sense to us in one way, where we are forced to look at things beyond life, beyond the ordinary life which we are leading. So beyond something, is there anything which really makes sense? Is there anything which has true value, true worth for this whole drama that has been going around, and then we have been actively participating for so many years? It's like a kind of a serial show on the TV. You've gone through all these phases, and then you come back to where you started. So this cycle, when you think about it, it should touch a chord in us, a very chord at a very deep level. That is the, I would say, in a way, the source of some kind of a transformation, where it is possible to relook at things, try to put things in their proper place, and you have now a sense of proportion. So in that, I just wanted to tell you, while with this kind of background, I wanted to tell you about 4 levels of reality. Once you look at life from a broader perspective, we can discern 4 distinct levels of reality. The first one, which I have called it as existential or intrinsic reality. This is the reality of the physical world. You see things around you, objects. There's an objective world which is realized by the senses. The senses are the instruments which we have, where the inputs are taken from the external world, and we try to understand this. But again, a little bit of introspection will tell us that the limiting factor for the inputs from the external world is our own senses. We see in life, a lot of scientific information is available where we are told that there are some other living creatures whose sense of hearing or sense of smell or sense of touch or even the sense of sight is much more keen than what we as human beings have. An interesting example is the bats. The bats have this, what they call it as echolocation. They send out sound waves, and then they receive the echo from each object, and they're able to make out what that object is or what is its distance from you. And we are told some creatures of the sea, like the dolphins, they can hear for miles. Some whales and dolphins, they can hear across oceans also, and they make some beautiful sounds. So see, the senses which we have are not really so evolved in one way as compared to so many other creatures around us. But the interesting factor is we have the additional sense which we call as the mind. The mind is generally referred to as the sixth sense, where it has this capacity to experience things and then convert that experience into what is called as knowledge, and also store it in the memory. So you have this facility for the human beings, and the world around us, the external objective world, is something which is universally accepted. Universally accepted in the sense there is no question of dispute between us. No two individuals, no two persons would dispute about the existence of a table or a chair or something which is objective, which is tangible, which you can experience with all your senses. So there's no question of debate or dispute or argument about the existential or the first level of reality. We take it for granted, it is there, and we are able to see it, and there is a mutual agreement between individuals, and as a community also, as a society, we are all accustomed to it. And this level of reality over a period of time, as I said, becomes our natural surrounding. We take it for granted. We take it for granted, and then we start utilizing the objective world for our own purposes. So one level of reality is the intrinsic reality that is there, objective reality, which is sometimes also called as factual or actual reality. So this level is the first level in our cognition of what we call as reality. Then we come to the second level. The second level of reality, which I have named it as transactional or relative reality. This is how we interact with each other. This reality is what we build it up over a period of time. Build it up over a period of time in the sense when I'm relating myself to somebody, I try to draw some conclusions from my perception, from that relationship. I create an idea about that person. I create a concept. I create an image of that person. So that image is what is important for me in all relationship. Because we have this community, we have this ability, as I said, of communication and establishing relationships which are based on our communication, whether it is verbal or non-verbal, through our emotions, through our senses. So we have both the verbal and non-verbal communication that is happening, and we build up these relationships. And the beauty of this is, I as an individual may have a certain image about a person, and another person may have a totally different image about the same person. Not only that, we go one step further, our own image is also getting reinforced or enhanced because of this interaction, because somebody comes and tells me, gives me some feedback. You're good or you're not so good, or you are good in this, you're not good in this, or I find this trait in you or this characteristic in you. So it is a continuous process where I am building up my own image, and I am also building up images about others, and more or less I am crystallizing these images. So I have a certain image about my parents, I have a certain image about my siblings, I have a certain image about my wife, I have a certain image about my boss. So this level of reality is that in a relationship we are surviving or thriving on the basis of the images which we create. Do we see this factor? Do we see this factor where we are slowly building up these things? And as I said, we have created through this process the whole society. The whole society, communities, religions or castes or divisions or tribes or whatever you call it as, you have built it up on the basis of this reality. This is more or less a question of perceptive reality. Perceptive reality which can vary from one end to the other end of the spectrum. There is no uniformity in this perception. There is no uniformity anywhere. It's like there's a small story about a Zen master. One of his disciples came and asked a Zen master as to what do you think about the world. Then the immediate response or the question which the Zen master raised was, he said, whose world? If there are 800 crore people in this world, each one has created his own world. So practically we have 8 billion worlds out there. So you see the uniqueness of this reality. And once you become more aware of it, you can actually dissociate yourself and look at it as something happening external to you, where your image doesn't really matter much. So we are responding in our own unique way. We are creating that in our own way, and then everybody is doing this continuously. Everybody is doing this continuously. But the over a long period of time, human beings have learned to live in large communities. We form a society and interact with each other, even though to a great extent we don't know each other. If you take our own community or our own complex, if you're living in a complex of 500 or 600 apartments, you don't know most of them. Maybe a few of them neighbors here and there, whomsoever you keep meeting, you do. But you have learned to live together. You have learned to live with agreement and disagreement. You have learned to cooperate even with strangers. This is something which is considered to be unique only to the human beings, where we are able to transact with each other even though we don't know, because we have created a society which is based on certain rules and regulations, certain things which are acceptable, which are not acceptable. By and large, it's not as though that there is no disharmony, there is no conflict. This is something which continuously happens, but to a great extent we are able to lead a life which is quite comfortable in one way, where there is not too much of conflict or too much of disagreement. And there are pockets in this world where there is a tremendous amount of violence, tremendous amount of disturbance. So that is a continuing thing, but still we are in a reality where we accept it, and then we generally, as I said, contribute to the welfare of the society as a whole. That is what makes living possible. If the quantum of disagreement and the quantum of dissociation with each other increases substantially, for whatever reason it may be, there will be great amount of turmoil and conflict and disturbance and violence. All these things go about, but the basic idea is that this is more or less a matter of our own perception of the world and the worldview which I have created. The world of ideas, the world of opinions, the world of thoughts, the world of ideologies, the world of my own construction, my own building up of the whole system. And sometimes we find that we are in conflict with ourselves also. We are in conflict with ourselves because somehow there is something which is not matching, something that's not coming together. So this level of reality has to be carefully observed. You have to get into that observation mode, which will tell you that this level of reality is something totally different from the objective reality. You are at a next level of that reality. The third level of reality, which I have called it as experiential or personal reality, is again based on the same mechanism of receptivity, retention, and retrieval mechanism of our experiences. These experiences are something which are very, very personal and which may match or may not match with others. For example, if there is something which I need to eat or taste, which I am doing it for the first time in my life, the experience, the taste of something conveys to me, you cannot really communicate with the same experience to somebody else. Even if you try to do whatever you want to communicate, that will be highly, inadequate, and the other person may not comprehend it at all. This is at the level of experience, and this can happen in so many ways. For example, the pain I experience. Can I communicate to anybody? What kind of communication is it possible to make the other person also actually experience the same kind of pain which I experience? For that matter, happiness. For that matter, any kind of suffering, a mental injury. If I am hurt by somebody by words or gestures or actions, that experience is something which is totally personal. So I have a reality in me which accepts only direct experiences. Directly, I should be able to experience that, and that experience is something which is mine, in the sense which is something totally personal and unique to me. For instance, the same dish, we may all generally agree that it is sweet, or it is sour or hot or whatever it is. But does it really convey, does the experience of one person match 100% with another person's experience of the same thing? It does not. We find this to be something which is personal. So we are talking about an experience where we are spending more and more time. If you look at our lives, we find that all life is basically experiential. Fundamentally, at the base, all life is experiential. At the second level, life we have seen is relationship. But at this level, life is experiential. But through these experiences, we may convert them into ideas and concepts and theories and hypotheses and whatnot. That's a different thing. But life we see is only experiencing, continuously experiencing at different levels. Not only the sensual level, the level of feeling, the level of thinking, the level of absorption, and that, as I mentioned, depends upon the frequency, the intensity, and the quality of the experience. You know, the more intense a particular experience is, or more frequent a particular experience is, we tend to store that more strongly. We tend to remember that more strongly. It's not that all experiences are of the same frequency or intensity or quality. Most of them are passing experiences again. But those experiences which are occurring frequently, which are occurring very intensely, and which are qualitatively different from my earlier experiences, I am making myself into that. I am a bundle of all such experiences which are something which are personal to me, which are there directly affecting my life. And this is what happens with most of the people where unfortunately we may refer to them as people who are unbalanced or abnormal or subnormal or whatever it is. At an experiential level, if you are living on a different scale than what is acceptable by the society, you are again classifying them as abnormal or subnormal or something queer or strange or not matching the whole system as such. But there is no scale as such. Actually, it's only for our convenience we might have created a scale or a measurement in the society. But as the joke goes, most of us, from a psychiatrist's point of view, could be people who need to be confined to the asylum, but because we are not a real threat or danger to the society, we are still allowed to roam about in this world. So that this is the third level of reality, which I have called as the experiential or personal. And finally, we come to what is called as the transcendent reality. This transcendent reality is, there are some moments in our life where we feel or we experience what is called as that intense sense of being, the intense sense of my being there. I am there, and there is very little activity of the mind. Thought and feelings, your experiences and other things have got nothing to do with it. These are actually, this kind of experience is something which is the sense of being, this intense sense of being. This is normally not very sustained, or it won't be there continuously with us. This sense is something which is, uh, you experience it on and off. I'm again trying to convey something where I'm saying that it is something which is very intense. Intensely, you feel that there is a great sense of being. There's a great sense of being in me. And maybe when we are under this lockdown, this is actually a very good time when you allow your mind to become as inactive as possible. You may allow that intense sense of being to descend into you. That intense sense of being can descend into you once you are allowing the mind to become more and more quiet, not being disturbed by your thoughts and emotions. So in this particular thing, you can't really make an effort also. You can't really make an effort to make your thought or emotions quieten. As I said, in most of the times, what happens is it comes uninvited. You only need to prepare yourself in such a way, like you're sitting in your balcony, you've opened the door, you allowed the breeze and sunlight to come in. They've been waiting outside. The breeze and sunlight have been waiting outside to enter, but you haven't opened your door. So similarly, from a psychological point of view, if you're opening that door, where you are allowing this intense sense of being to descend in you, then it becomes uh, a really unique experience, which we are told is only possible for human beings. Because I'm not going into that the aspect of consciousness and other things, because that's a subject by itself which we can take up at a later time. But generally, this sense of awareness, as I have mentioned, is something like a state of deep sleep. That state of deep sleep is when you are in that deep sleep state, you don't know anything. You are not aware of anything at all. When you are in it, you are not aware of it from the mental perspective. From the point of view of the mind, you are absolutely unaware of it. But the moment you come out of that deep sleep, you realize that you had enjoyed a very beautiful sleep, a dreamless sleep, a happy, duration where you are totally unaware of yourself. This is beyond the waking and the dream state. You have this deep sleep state where, as I said, when you are in it, you are not aware of it. But when you are out of it, you are aware of having experienced it. Now, I want you to live with a particular, state of being where the critical factor, the most important aspect of this whole experience of a transcendent reality is that you are confronting a depth of understanding that surpasses the subject itself. The subject is the I, the subject is the me. Now, the most important element in this is you are touching a core, you are touching a level of understanding that surpasses the I itself. Now, it is now a question of can we, or can that profound level of reality sustain, and can we be in that state being fully awake with all our senses being active and aware, but the sense of I is no longer there because you are not connected to your thoughts, your emotions, your memory, your knowledge, what you call as the I or the me. Now, that question should be a living question to us in order to touch this transcendent reality and it becomes a part of our waking consciousness. Thank you.